All right, guys. Today we're here to talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets postseason review and then a bit into the 2023-24 season sort of review, I guess, in a sense, a preview. Sorry. Um, yeah, so probably not the season Columbus Blue Jacket fans were expecting to see. You sign you sign Johnny Hockey, you get his illustrious signature, and you think, cool, things are going to look up for us this season. Everything's going to head in the right direction. You had Jacob Voracek with you. You know, what what reason was there to not really perform? And then Zachary Werenski goes down for the entire season, and your season pretty much capitulated from there. Finishing 31st overall, 1 point away from, dead last. I think you were third bottom in terms of wins, second worst goal difference in the league. Yeah, so things really didn't pan out too well for the Columbus Blue Jackets this season. However, not a bad season to have a bit of a fall down, because it's not like you only signed Johnny Gaudreau for a season. You signed him for 7. Yep, you wasted one of those seasons, but you still got 6 more. But in the same aspect, you end up with the third overall pick in what was supposed to be a very stacked, uh, top round draft. So, you pick up Adam Fantilli, and ultimately, a lot of people were saying he probably should have gone second. So you almost get a steal in that sense. But honestly, the bloke who went second in Carlson is not too bad of a hockey player either. So yeah, I mean, what do you say in terms of the 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 season that you just had? Yeah, Blue Jackets fans, you're probably not too happy with how everything went, but ultimately, I just think it fast tracks and probably gives you a bit of longevity in what could be a dynasty. Given that you were able to grab the third overall pick in what is a stellar draft. So I'm going to pass on. That's basically the season review. I don't really think you want to touch on it too much more. It was a really poor review. Put it in the back rear vision mirror and look forward to what I think is going to be a pretty stellar next 5 or so years. If you're a Columbus fan, just take us through some of those, you know, signings and where the team's looking so far. We got Jaden with us.
Alrighty. Yeah, not too much to say on big movements in regards to the Columbus Blue Jackets from the off season and kind of the trade deadline from last. They bring in Provorov and Damon Severson via signings through free agency, and that is pretty much it. And Tim Burney is the only RFA status in the team that's noteworthy. Played about 59 or something games last year. I doubt he cracks the lineup with Werenski coming back, and then you've got the additions of Severson and Provorov. But I thought I'd note that just in case he can. But you can see they've got some depth with Boquist being there as well. Um, yeah, their forwards, obviously Goudreau, Jenner, and Line on that first line. Interesting to see. We've got Cap Friendly predicting Fantilli on the second line. It would be interesting to see if he did center the first line. But second line, you got Ken Johnson, Fantilli, and Marchenko. Very cheap second line. Um, all RFAs, all $925,000, under a mil. That's a cheap second line. It's the cheapest line they've got. Bemstrom, Sillinger, and Roslovich round out the third. Then you got Robinson, Curley, and Olivia on the fourth. Obviously, you got scratches here as well in Texier, who could fill in one of those roles on the fourth line. Their defenders, it's looking like an amazing defense. They got Wawrinski, Severson on the first, most likely, Provorov and Jurasek on the second, and Goodbranson and Peak on on the third, and they got some depth as well with Boquist and Bean, who could fill in that defensive. So yeah, they're stacked on defenders. They've drafted defenders, so they're doing a kind of like a New Jersey in the sense of building from the back. It seems to be a way to go. Goalies, this is probably their weakest point. They got Elvis Merzlikins and then Tarasov as their backup. Merzlikins had a very abysmal year. I think it was 4.23 goals against average. It was below 900, obviously, in save percentage, where all his previous years he was above 900. So that is the big downer for this Columbus team. But having a look at
That
it,
wasn't good.
yeah, it wasn't good. I think he got death threats from Columbus fans as well. Like it was just not good all around. So yeah, it's a really good squad here. They obviously pick up Fantilli with the number 3 overall. Um, they got Jiricek last year at number 6. So they are building this very young, strong squad, and it's not going to take too much to make this a powerhouse team. Honestly, I can see this doing it. I just think they just need to fix their goalie situation and maybe add some a little bit more firepower in the forward line as well, either through depth or a big
Yeah,
signing.
I think they're probably lacking a little bit of depth in their bottom six. But I also think first line center. I know, Fantilli, great pickup, all the rest of that, but do you really want to expect him to be? And he probably will be their first line center going forward, but I don't think Boone Jenner's their second line center answer either. So, and Cole Sillinger's shown he's not ready to 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 move into that top six role either. So I do. I think they need a first line center. I think this team 100% can make the playoffs this season. But given how tough the East is, I think you're 100% on the goaltender front. I think Merzlikins needs to be moved on. I don't know how you do that, but
Mm,
you move him on somehow. Bring in another goaltender. I think I mentioned to you prior to obviously us filming this. Potentially they're the ones who go after John Gibson
mm,
because if you could put in front of this defense, I know it's probably a bit offensively driven, but if you could put in front of that defense a John Gibson type goaltender and then get yourself a top line center or a top six center, this team could be absolutely phenomenal next season. They've got a lot of young talent. They add in to the third overall pick, um, who's probably not your normal third overall pick, but he's predicted to be a pretty bloody good player. Alongside a few of their other young lads who are performing quite well. And then you've got that firepower on the top line of Goodrow and Line, especially if Line can get himself sorted, stay fit, and really get himself firing. This is probably a team with Werenski back and leading well. Yeah, I could see these guys. They will at least be pushing for a wild card spot this season. The question is going to be around if they can fix their goaltending and they can potentially get a top line center. That's what'll really push them into potentially, you know,
mm.
taking maybe a top three. I know it's going to be tough. Like you look at who they've got to verse. You're coming up against Carolina, New Jersey, New York Rangers. I mean, Pittsburgh is still pushing to be relevant. Washington, New York Islanders. So it's the only one they probably don't have to worry about is the Philadelphia Flyers.
Mm.
So they've got six other teams in their division that they've got to worry about. But if they can do the right thing and make a few more moves before the season's out, they don't have a huge amount of cap space left. That's probably the only worrying sign. Um, but if they can make some good moves, I definitely think these guys will be pushing for that wild card spot.
Yeah. Um, I think they're probably the fifth strongest in the Metro as it stands at the moment. Behind obviously the big playmakers, you got Canes, New Jersey, Rangers, and then I'm going blank, but there was another one. Maybe Pittsburgh. Um,
Islanders or Pittsburgh.
I
But
think they might
I'd
be,
almost
yeah,
put these guys stronger than the
yeah.
Islanders and
It's
Pittsburgh.
just
I'd almost have them at 4.
I know they've said that they're going to have faith in Merzlikins. Anyway, that's what I heard. And honestly, it's one bad year, and honestly, it was a team that wasn't going to do much anyway. So it's the bad year you want, in a sense.
Mm,
It's just if he can mentally recover from that and then get his game back. I understand that you kind of want to ride with him because it is a hard contract to move if you do have to move it. But I would like to see at least a good backup to go along with that. Maybe
yeah.
a 1A 1B type situation um,
Yeah.
to do that. But yeah, I think they got to do the depth forward. I think that's where they're lacking at the moment. You got to round out that forward line now. You've got a pretty solid top six, but obviously they're a very young team, and so maybe just a veteran presence here or there to help grow these kids as well. Make sure that Fantilli and whatnot have good role models, and I feel like just one or two slight veteran presence, for that third line, edging second line, would really round out this team. And like they've got a lot of depth on the defensive side of things. Like their two scratches listed here, Boquist and Bean, they're both on 2 point something $1 million contracts. So they're not cheap scratches by any means. And then obviously they do have basically a 900,000 dead cap with Wenberg, but like you said, they got just under 5 million to use. I think you can round out and find two veterans for 5 million, and then round out that forward line. That's what I would do.
Yeah. I think, with what you said about Merzlikins, I don't hold to. I know he had a bad season, but as you mentioned, the whole team was bad. Like Werenski went down. They didn't have too much going on in front of him. So like it's tough to put it all on him. But my issue with him is with everything the Columbus fans did, is he really driven to win them back? Like know he had a bad season, but like he wasn't a bad goalie. And given the situation that Columbus found themselves in last year, that sort of stuff to receive death threats and all the rest of that, that's got to be playing on his mind. Like I'd almost be saying as management, like, I mean, I'd probably talk it over with him, like, hey, can you get past that? But that could be an absolute miraculous just on that front. Like, imagine being treated like that by your fans just
I
because
I
you've
would
had
I
one
would
poor
want out.
season.
I would want out.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my point. Like, for me, I feel like I'm not saying that Elvis can't like he can't redeem himself. My point more is I think he needs a change of scenery to redeem himself. I think he needs to go to a team and a fan base that's going to appreciate him rather than stay with a fan base that's already shown the second you fuck up once, that's it. Death threats are
Granted, he
coming
did
your
fuck up.
way.
He
Like,
did mess up more than once. He was very abysmal last year. His
uh,
positioning was kind of atrocious. Um,
mm,
I know just from watching a few games that like his positioning was atrocious. He couldn't save anything that was slightly on target. Sometimes he'd save some hard ones, and then just some easy ones would go in um, with him. But like I understand Columbus is frustrated as a fan base because they've been down in the dumps for so long, and they want success. And you expect that success with Goudreau and Line A signings and whatnot. But I feel like they put all that pressure of on Merzlikins, and I don't think even with a good Merzlikins they were doing anything that year. They didn't have the defense for it, and currently as it stands, they've got the defense now, especially if
mm,
Werenski plays and stays healthy and whatnot. Um, they've got the defense now, but they still don't have a proper forward line.
yeah,
So they still have problems there. So uh, unless that gets addressed, they could still see themselves missing out. I expect them to definitely do better than last year. I don't feel like it will be the dumpster fire that it was, but how better it is really depends on if Fantilli really does show up and it is NHL ready, and it really does show up if Damon Severson players his last year. Like people don't understand. Damon Stevenson played his best year ever last year. Um, he did the least amount of mistakes. But if he goes back to the old ways, Columbus fans will realize really quickly that it's really hard to watch him sometimes, and that he makes some
Mm.
very very poor decision, bad mistakes that cost you goals. So he didn't
Exactly.
do it. He didn't do it
I think
much
he's
last season, but yeah.
I think he's grown as a player, and I think he'll
Hmm.
help them. It's the thing. Like I think it's a good pickup by them. I think him alongside Wierenski,
Oh yes, I
um,
worry about the cap
you
hit.
know,
That's my issue with it.
well, the cap hit was questionable, but he was always going to go for around that, especially when you're talking free agency and stuff.
mm,
Um, but yeah, my thing for Columbus fans, I'm sorry, but if you're one of the people who were angry at Elvis, what did you think was going to happen when you lose your best player in Werenski?
mm,
Like that year, the second he went down, I was like, yeah, there goes Columbus. Like, and it was the year to be bad. Like we spoke about this a lot in regards to Columbus. Like if you were ever gonna have a bad year and waste a year contract of someone like Johnny Gaudreau, Lion A, and all the rest of that, at least it was the year that you're going into a stacked draft. They had the opportunity to pick up Connor Bedard. They didn't, but they still picked up an out and out superstar. Like this kid, I know there's always the chance that they bust and all the rest of that, but this kid's been touted as a really phenomenal player. Yep, no one was going to get close to Bedard in that sense, but you take Bedard out of the draft, or you put Fantilli in any other draft that's gone up lately, and he's probably going number one. So yeah, like I get that everything that happened last year was frustrating, but you've almost come out well, you have come out 10 times better off
yeah,
because you were never going to do anything last year anyway. Even if Wierenski was healthy and Merzlikins played well, I don't think you really do too much last year. Like
yeah,
the East is stacked and was stacked. Whereas now you add in a out and out superstar who will probably be your number one center, which you've struggled with and you've needed for so long. Um, and you've now got, another season under a couple of your young lads as well. So they're another year older, which is fantastic because they're a bit bigger. They understand the game a little bit more. Um, and you can now go, all right, cool. Then you've also got the Islanders who are getting older, Pittsburgh getting older, Washington getting older. New York Rangers are going to be questionable. There's a lot of question marks around them this year. So, yeah, you've still got Carolina and New Jersey who are probably going to be the powerhouses for quite some time. But the East gets it's still strong, but that slight bit weaker. And potentially that's where we're saying, I could see Columbus being that fourth best team in the Metro.
mm,
So yeah, like I think this has all worked out really well for Columbus. They fall last year, but they get a fantastic draft pick out of it, and they really gear up to go again. I just, for me, I think if they didn't have the shit season they had last year, they're probably sitting in no man's land for a bit longer than probably
yeah.
expected. But
And
this
then Johnny
Fantilli pickup,
Gaudreau gets wasted. Patriolani gets wasted. My thing is you can't cheer on Fantilli without cheering on Merzlikins because he is half the reason that you got him. So if you're bagging on Merzlikins and cheering Fantilli, then you're just not doing it right, in my opinion.
and and what are you doing? Yeah, exactly.
Because he is the reason why you got him. Yeah, I could definitely see fourth. It really does depend if Penn's bounce back and whatnot, but the Metro looks like it's getting slightly weaker with some of the old dynasties dying out, but other teams are still picking up the slack as well in Columbus with this little rebuild they've done. So it's looking strong. Metro's looking strong. They're definitely not on the caliber of the Canes or New Jersey yet, um, but they're knocking on the door in a sense if they can just round out their bottom six and depends on their goaltending situation. and obviously they're going to stay healthy.
And that's it. Healthy is going to be a big thing, but I think Elvis, if he does stay in Columbus and can bounce back and get over that, Elvis has the potential to be a fantastic goalie. There's a reason they signed him for 5.4 mil. Like they didn't just throw that contract out willy-nilly. Like he's a good goaltender. Um, but so like if he can bounce back in Columbus, awesome. If not, if you can move him and bring someone else in, then obviously that's great as well. There is some goaltenders up for grabs out there at the moment. Um, so why not have a crack, especially if you can trade out Merzlikins? That gives you 5.4 mil. Um, so yeah, look, I think if these guys can make a couple of big moves, as we've spoken about, potentially goaltender, bottom six forwards, and I know you haven't really touched on it too much, and I think it's more around that salary cap issue. But for me, if they could get a top six center, to either go take that first line away from Boone Jenner,
You got to
um,
knock Boone Jenner the third line, in my opinion. If you want to be
yes,
Stanley Cup competitive, Boone Jenner's got to be on your third, in my opinion. Yeah.
and that's where I'm at. So that's why I think a top it would be a top line on theirs, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a first line center. It could be a second line center whilst Fantilli is building. So it's a second line center that's going to play first line
Mm,
until Fantilli's ready to move up. But I definitely think they need that center, because I don't think a Boone Jenner and a Fantilli combo is going to get it done.
yeah.
I think if you move Boone Jenner down to that third line, I think they become a lot stronger because I still think Boone Jenner's a fantastic player at 3.75 mil is a really good cap hit, but he's not a top line center. He's your middle to bottom six center, and he's serviceable on that third line. So yeah, look, I make those moves, Columbus, and I have no doubt you'll be fighting for that wild card spot. There's no reason why you shouldn't. And you've got some other prospects waiting in the wins as well, because I think it's Chinkov. He played 30 odd games for you last year, 62 the year before. He's got some potential. He's a young 22-year-old player. He's probably going to make his way into the lineup at some stage this year. So yeah, nothing but young talent coming through this Columbus lineup. So
Mm.
yeah, the next 5 years, if they play it right, look out.
Yeah, well, they're going to manage the cap because they've got a lot of young kids. Like their second line, it's all RFAs. Um, they got a lot of RFAs on this roster for next year and years going forward. So they do have to manage their salary cap in regards to that. Because I was thinking like maybe they would be a good candidate for like a Nylander from Toronto. Snag him 6 mil, pay him whatever mil next year, but I'm just looking at all those RFAs and I'm like, is that even possible? Because they got so much to
Yeah.
so many upgrades that in salary cap wise they have to make in the future. So yeah, that's just one thing they have to be mindful of when they're making any new signings. Don't go crazy. I know the cap hopefully goes up by 4 mil next year, but just don't go too crazy.
Yeah, they're gonna need to move some players. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw like a good Branson moved on at some point. I
Mm,
know Roslovic is out of contract next season, so that's an extra 4 mil that adds on to that cap. Um, yeah, like I think you'll see a couple of moves around. You might even see Corrali, 2.5 mil on that fourth line. Bean and Boquist. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
lot. That's 5 mil to have as a scratch. So
but they've paid
yeah,
a
I,
lot
I
on their
would be surprised.
defense. But the people that you mentioned that they could move out because of their cap and whatnot, they're all their bottom six, and that just shows they need to upgrade their bottom six.
Yeah,
And that top six center position, they do that. I think this is Stanley Cup contending team if they do all those moves. And depending how Leakings goes this year, you make moves in that regard. But yeah, if you got nothing else, I think we can end it there.
yeah, I think we're done.
Alrighty, guys. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be reviewing all the 32 teams post-season and then the moves they've done so far for this season and going forward. And leave a comment below what you think of Columbus, their future, how they're going to pan out this year, their moves with Severson and Provorov, good or bad, bad contracts, good contracts. And yeah, let us know. Until next time, catch you guys.
I guess.